The fog rolled in from the Pacific Ocean like a living thing, thick and gray, swallowing the streetlights of Moonlight Bay one by one. Sarah Mitchell stood at her bedroom window on the second floor of her rental house, watching the mist consume the neighborhood below. She had moved to the small California coastal town 3 months ago, seeking peace after her divorce from Marcus, but peace had proven elusive. The house on Seacliff Drive was perfect, at least on paper. A charming two-story Victorian with weathered blue paint and white trim. It sat on a quiet street just 2 blocks from the beach. The rent was surprisingly affordable, which the landlord, Mrs. Chen, had explained was due to the previous tenant leaving Kit suddenly. Sarah hadn't to ask for details. She needed a fresh start, and Moonlight Bay, with its population of barely 8,000, seemed like the ideal place to disappear. But disappearing, Sarah had learned, was harder than she thought. It started 3 weeks after she moved in. Small things at first. A sense of being watched when she walked home from her job at the Moonlight Bay Public Library. The feeling of eyes on her back when she sorted through books in the quiet afternoon hours. She told herself it was paranoia, a side effect of the anxiety medication Dr. Patterson had prescribed after the divorce. Then came the notice. The first one appeared on the Tuesday morning in late October. Sarah had gone out to her mailbox, shivering in the cold morning air, and found it tucked between the utility bill and the grocery store flyer. No envelope, just a folded piece of white paper with neat handwriting in black ink. I see you in the mornings when you drink your coffee by the window. You look beautiful when you don't know anyone is watching. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the words. She looked up and down Seacliff Drive, but the street was empty except for old Mr. Kowalski walking his 33 houses down. The fog was heavy that morning, reducing visibility to maybe 30 feet. Anyone could be hiding in that gray blanket. She took the note inside and called the Moonlight Bay Police Department. Officer Rebecca Santos arrived 40 minutes later, a stone-faced woman in her mid-40s with still gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Have you noticed anyone following you? Officer Santos asked, sitting at Sarah's kitchen table, notepad open. No, I don't think so. But TV felt watched for a while now. Any recent breakups? Ex-boyfriend? Anyone who might have a reason to fixate on you? Sarah hesitated. My ex-husband, Marcus. But he is back in Seattle. We haven't spoken since the divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Officer Santos wrote something down. You'll need his contact information. We'll check it out. In the meantime, be aware of your surroundings. Keep your doors and windows locked. If you see anything suspicious, call us immediately. After the officer left, Sarah felt more unsettled than before. She spent the rest of the day checking locks, pulling curtains closed, jumping at every small sound. That night, she barely slept, lying in bed with your phone clutched in her hand, ready to dial 911 use at the first sign of danger. The second note came 4 days later. This time it was on her car windshield when she left work at 5:30. The library parking lot was nearly empty, just her Toyota Camry and Director Morrison's Subaru. The sky was already dark, November in Northern California bringing early sunsets and long, cold nights. You smiled at the little boy in the library today. You would make such a good mother. I watch you with the children and imagine what could be. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her hands shook so badly she could barely unlock her car door. She looked around the parking lot, peering into the shadows between the few streetlights, but saw no one. Whoever was watching her knew her schedule, knew where she worked, knew intimate details about her daily life. She drove straight to the police station. This time, Officer Santos seemed more concerned. This is escalating, she said, examining the note in a plastic evidence bag. The language is becoming more possessive, more personal. We're going to increase patrols in your neighborhood, and I want you to consider staying with someone for a few days. But Sarah had no one. That was the whole point of moving to Moonlight Bay. No friends yet beyond casual acquaintances at work. No family in California. Her parents were dead. Her only sister lived in New York, and she called into a Ford hotel. You'll be fine, Sarah said, though she didn't believe it. You'll be careful. That night, she bought pepper spray at the drugstore and installed a chain lock on her front door. She also bought blackout curtains for every window in the house, determined to rob her stalker of any view inside. For a week, nothing happened. Sarah began to relax, thinking maybe the police presence had scared whoever was watching her. She fell back into her routine. Coffee by the morning window, work at the library, quiet evenings at home with a book and a glass of wine. Then came the phone calls. The first one was at 11:47 at night. Sarah was already in bed, drifting towards sleep, when her cell phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but some instinct made her pick up. Hello. Silence. But not empty silence. She could hear breathing on the other end, slow and steady. Who is this? Sarah demanded, her voice sharper than she felt. The breathing continued for another 5 seconds, then the call disconnected. Sarah lay awake until dawn, her phone beside her, waiting for another call that never came. The calls continued for the next 2 weeks, always late at night, always from different numbers. Sometimes just breathing, sometimes she thought she heard faint music in the background, or the sound of waves. Once, she was certain she heard her name whispered, so quietly she almost convinced herself she imagined it. Officer Santos arranged for phone records to be examined, but the numbers all came back to burner phones, untraceable. The police increased their patrols, but Moonlight Bay was a small town with limited resources. They called in to watch Sarah's house around the clock. Have you thought about leaving town? Officer Santos asked during one of their meetings. Just until we figured this out. Sarah had thought about it. But where would she go? Back to Seattle. Back to the city where everyone knew about her failed marriage, where she'd lost everything. No. She wouldn't run. Not again. I am staying, she said firmly. It was early December when things took a darker turn. Sarah was closing the library on a Wednesday evening, the last to leave as usual. Director Morrison had gone home an hour earlier, citing a migraine. As Sarah locked the front doors and walked across the empty parking lot, she heard footsteps behind her. She spun around, pepper spray already in her hand. The parking lot was empty, but the sound continued, echoing off the brick facade of the library. Footsteps, getting closer. Sarah ran to her car, fumbling with her keys, hearing those footsteps matching her pace. She got the door open, threw herself inside, and locked it. Only then did she look back. Nothing. No one. Just empty asphalt glistening under the streetlights, a light rain beginning to fall. She drove home with her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, checking her rearview mirror every few seconds. No one followed her. But when she pulled into her driveway and saw her house, her blood went cold. Every light in the house was on. She knew she'd left them off. She was always careful about it, conscious of her utility bill. But now her house blazed like a beacon in the dark street, every window glowing. Sarah sat in her car with the engine running, debating whether to go inside or call the police. Before she could see it, her phone rang. A known number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Do you like what I did with the lights? The voice was male, distorted, clearly using some kind of voice changer that made it sound mechanical and unhuman. I wanted you to see better when you came home. I know how you hate the dark. Who are you? Sarah shouted into the phone. What do you want from me? I want you to understand, the voice said. I want you to know that you were never alone. I am always here, Sarah. Always watching. Always caring. This is insane. Leave me alone. But I can't. You were special. You don't see it yet, but you will. We were connected, you and me. Connected by fate, by destiny. By Sarah hung up and immediately called 911. Two police cars arrived within 10 minutes. Officer Santos and another officer, young Officer Chen, searched the house while Sarah waited outside, shivering despite her coat. They found no signs of forced entry, no evidence anyone had been inside. But all the lights were indeed on, exactly as Sarah had described. Check for anything missing or out of place, Officer Santos instructed. Sarah went through the house room by room, the officers following. Everything seemed automatic until she reached her bedroom. There, on her pillow, was a single red rose. He didn't put it there, Sarah whispered, backing away from the bed. Officer Santos carefully picked up the rose with a gloved hand, examining it. No, not this time. We'll dust footprints, but I'm not optimistic. How did he get in? Sarah asked. How? No one had an answer. That night, Sarah stayed at the Moonlight Bay Inn, a small bed and breakfast near the town center. She called in Tiber to sleep in her house, not after someone had been inside, had touched her things, had stood in her bedroom. Officers Santos assured her they would patrol the area heavily and process the house for evidence. The next morning, Sarah called her sister Jenny in New York. Come stay with me for a while, Jenny urged. Please, Sarah. This is serious. This person is escalating. You may not suffer there. I can't just abandon my job, my life, Sarah protested. Even as part of her wanted nothing more than to get on the next plane out of California. Your life. Sarah, you don't have a life if you wait dead. The blunt words hit hard. Sarah promised to think about it. Instead, she decided to take matters into her own hands. That afternoon, she went to a security company and had cameras installed around her house. 4 cameras covering every angle, front door, back door, driveway, and the rear yard. The technician assured her they were top of the line, with motion detection and night vision, all feeding to an app on her phone. If a squirrel crosses your yard, you will know about it, the technician said with a smile. Sarah felt better with the cameras in place. She moved back into her house that evening, though she kept her bedroom door locked and the chair wedged under the handle. The pepper spray stayed on her nightstand, within easy reach. For 3 days, the cameras showed nothing unusual. Occasional cars passing on the street. Mr. Kowalski walking his terrier. A few teenagers cutting through her yard as a shortcut. Nothing sinister. Sarah began to breathe easier. Maybe the stalker had been scared off by the increased police presence. Maybe it was over. Then, on the 4th night, her phone buzzed with a motion alert at 2:33 in the morning. Sarah jolted awake, grabbing her phone. The alert was from the backyard camera. She opened the app with trembling fingers and watched the footage. A figure stood in her yard, barely visible in the infrared light. Tall, wearing dark clothes and what looked like a hood pulled low. The figure stood completely still, facing the house, facing her bedroom window on the 2nd floor. Sarah's heart hammered. She should call 911. She should hide. But instead, she found herself transfixed by the screen, watching this motionless figure in her yard. After exactly 2 minutes, the figure turned and walked away, disappearing into the fog that had rolled in from the ocean. Sarah immediately called the police. Officer Santos arrived 20 minutes later, but by then, there was no sign of anyone. They reviewed the footage together, but the figure's face was completely hidden, making identification impossible. At least now we have proof, Officer Santos said. The seismic in your head. Someone is definitely stalking you. We'll share this with the state police, see if they can enhance the image. But enhanced images took time, and Sarah's fear was immediate and consuming. The next day at work, Sarah was so distracted she nearly dropped an entire cart of books. Director Morrison pulled her aside with concern etched on her lined face. Sarah, dear, Officer Santos called me. She told me what has been happening. If you need time off, we can arrange it. Your safety is more important than work. I need a routine, Sarah said. I need to feel normal. If I stop living my life, he wins. But normality was an illusion that shattered completely that evening. Sarah was driving home from work when she noticed a car following her. A dark blue sedan, staying exactly 2 car lengths behind through every turn. Her mouth went dry. She took a random turn onto a side street, and the sedan followed. Another turn, and still it followed. Sarah's breathing came in short gasps. She grabbed her phone to call 911, but in her panic, it slipped from her hand and fell into the passenger footwell, out of reach while driving. The sedan was still behind her. Sarah made a split-second decision and turned toward the police station instead of her house. The sedan continued to follow, maintaining the precise distance. When Sarah pulled into the police station parking lot, the sedan drove past without slowing. She caught a glimpse of the driver, just a shadow behind tinted windows. Inside the station, Sarah was shaking so hard she could barely speak. Officer Santos reviewed her statement with grave concern. Did you get a license plate number? No, he couldn't see it. I was so scared. Make and model. Dark blue sedan. Toyota, I think, or Honda. I don't know cars very well. It wasn't much to go on, but Officer Santos promised to have patrols look out for it. That night, Sarah didn't go home at all. She checked back into the Moonlight Bay, tasting her sister that maybe she was right, maybe it was time to leave. But even as she typed the message, Sarah felt a stubborn resistance. Why should she be driven from her home, her job, her attempt at a new life? Why should this sick individual have the power over her? She fell asleep with the television on, needing the noise to drown out her thoughts. At some point in the night, Sarah's phone buzzed. Half asleep, she checked it and saw a text from an unknown number. She opened it with a sense of dread. The message was a photo. It showed Sarah sleeping in her bed at the inn, taken from somewhere near the window. The curtains she had carefully closed before bed were pulled slightly apart, just enough for the camera to see inside. Below the image were words that made Sarah's blood freeze. You can hide from me. He'll always find you. Sarah screamed. She stumbled out of bed, tangling in the sheets, and ran to the door. It was locked, the chain in place. She yanked open the curtains, but saw nothing outside except the dark parking lot and her car, alone under a streetlight. The inn manager called the police after Sarah's screams woke other guests. Officer Santos arrived looking exhausted and grim. She examined Sarah's phone, then went outside to check for evidence. Nothing. As always, nothing but fear and violated security. Pack your things, Officer Santos said when she came back inside. I am driving you to the station. You way not staying here, and you way not going home. We way putting you up in a safe location until we catch this bastard. But even as they drove to the police station, Sarah felt the weight of watching eyes. This person knew where she lived, where she worked, where she went when she ran. This person had somehow gotten into secure locations, had taken a photo of her sleeping through a window that shouldn't have been accessible. Who is this person, and what did they really want? At the station, Officer Santos set Sarah up in a small break room with coffee and blankets while they arranged protective custody. Sarah sat numbly, staring at the base walls, trying to process everything that had happened. Sarah, Officer Santos said gently, sitting down across from her. I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about the answer. Is there anyone at all, from your past who might be doing this? Not just Marcos. Anyone who might have an obsession with you? Sarah thought hard. There had been a guy in college, Brad something, who had asked her out repeatedly and wouldn't take no for an answer. But that was almost 15 years ago. There was a patron at the Seattle library where she used to work who always requested her help specifically, a man in his 60s who gave her an uncomfortable feeling, but she'd left the job 2 years ago. No, she finally said. No one I can think of. Officer Santos sighed. Okay, we're going to keep you safe. Detective Morrison from county is coming in tomorrow to take over the case. He has more resources than we do. We're going to figure this out. Sarah wanted to believe her, but as she lay on the uncomfortable couch in the break room that night, listening to the sounds of the police station around her, she couldn't shake the feeling that her stalker was always one step ahead. That no matter what precautions they took, this person would find a way. She finally drifted into an uneasy sleep sometime after 4 in the morning. When she woke, Officer Santos was shaking her shoulder gently. Pale morning light filtered through the break room window. Sarah, wake up. We need to talk. Sarah sat up, groggy and confused. Officer Santos looked strange, her expression carefully neutral in a way that set alarm bells ringing. What happened? We got a call about an hour ago. Your ex-husband, Marcos Mitchell, is here. He drove all night from Seattle. He says he needs to talk to you urgently. Sarah's stomach dropped. Marcos. Why is he here? How does he even know what is happening? He says he has been trying to reach you. When you weren't answering, he called the library and they told him they've been dealing with a stalker situation. He is in the main lobby now. You don't have to see him if you don't want to, but he is very insistent. Says it is important. Sarah's mind raced. She and Marcos hadn't spoken since the divorce. Their marriage had ended badly, accusations and recriminations on both sides. The last thing she needed right now was to deal with him. But something in Officer Santos' expression made her pause. You think I should talk to him? I think it might be worthwhile, but the choice is yours. 5 minutes later, Sarah stood in the small interview room, facing the man she had once loved enough to marry. Marcos looked terrible. His usually neat dark hair was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion, his face covered in stubble. He wore jeans and a wrinkled hoodie, so different from his usual business casual attire. Sarah, he said the moment he saw her, relief flooding his features. Thank God. Evie been so worried. What are you doing here, Marcos? Sarah asked, keeping her distance. How did you even know what I was? Evie been trying to call you for days. When you didn't answer, I got scared. After everything that happened, I called your work, and they told me about the stalking situation. Sarah, I had to come. I had to warn you. Warn me? About what? Marcos ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Sarah's chest ice. About 6 weeks ago, I started getting strange emails. At first, I thought they were spam, but then they got more specific. Someone was asking questions about you, about our marriage, about why we got divorced, about where you moved to. Sarah's blood went cold. What? Why didn't you tell me? He didn't know how to reach you. You changed your number, you moved, you made it clear you didn't want any contact. I thought about trying to find you, but he didn't want to violate your boundaries. But then the emails got more intense, more obsessive. This person, whoever they added, they were fixated on you. They sent me photos. What kind of photos? Marcos pulled out his phone with shaking hands, scrolling through his emails. He showed Sarah a series of images. Her house in Moonlight Bay, her walking to her car, her at the library. Each photo had a caption. Questions posed to Marcos. Is she happy now? Does she think about what she lost? Does she deserve to be alone? Sarah felt like she might be sick. Did you respond? Did you tell them anything? No. God, no. I told them to leave you alone, to leave both of us alone. But they kept coming. Sarah, I think this person blames me for our divorce. I think they see themselves as some kind of protector for you. Some of the emails talked about watching over you and making sure you were safe now that you were alone. Officer Santos, who had been watching the exchange from the doorway, stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, I am going to need you to forward all those emails to you immediately. This is a major development. Of course, Marcos said. I should have come forward sooner. I wasn't sure if I was overreacting. Sarah sank into a chair, her mind reeling. This person contacted you 6 weeks ago. The days before the night started. They were researching me, learning about my life, my past. Marcos, did they ever identify themselves? Give any clue who they might be? No. The emails came from anonymous accounts. But Marcos hesitated. There was one thing. In several of the emails, they mentioned the ocean. They talked about the sound of waves and the Pacific calling. I think whoever this is, they were definitely in Moonlight Bay. Over the next few hours, Detective Morrison arrived from county, a lean man in his 50s with sharp eyes and an efficient manner. He took over the investigation, arranging for the tech team to trace Marcos' email while he interviewed both Marcos and Sarah extensively. The pattern is clear, Detective Morrison said, reviewing his notes. This individual has been planning this for at least 6 weeks, possibly longer. They identified you, researched your background, even reached out to your ex-husband to learn more about you. This is an organized, methodical stalker. The most dangerous kind. But who? Sarah asked desperately. I don't know anyone in Moonlight Bay except my co-workers. Evie barely made any friends here. That's what we need to figure out. I want you to make a list of everyone you've interacted with since moving here. Everyone. The person who sold you coffee at the cafe, the mailman, neighbors, co-workers, library patrons. Everyone. Sarah spent the afternoon creating the list, racking her brain for every fuss, every interaction. It was longer than she expected. The librarian she worked with, Director Morrison, young Michael at the circulation desk, elderly Janet who handled acquisitions. For landlord, Mrs. Chen. Her neighbors on Seacliff Drive, Mr. Kowalski with his terrier, the Johnson family next door with their 3 noisy kids, the young couple across the street whose names she didn't know, regular library patrons, Professor Williams who came in daily to read newspapers, the group of retirees who used the computers, the teenagers who studied together after school. The more Sarah wrote, the more hopeless she felt. It could be anyone. The stalker could be someone she saw every day, someone she smiled at and thanked without a second thought. I need Sonia, Sarah told Officer Santos. Can I step outside? I'll come with you. They walked out into the cold December afternoon. The sky was gray with impending rain, and the smell of the ocean was strong in the air. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. This is my fault, she said quietly. What? No. Sarah, this is absolutely not your fault. I moved here to escape, to start over. I thought I could just disappear, be anonymous. But I made myself vulnerable instead. A single woman, alone in a new town, no friends, no connections. I made myself a perfect victim. Officer Santos grabbed Sarah's shoulders, forcing her to make eye contact. Listen, Tima. You did nothing wrong. You deserved to start fresh, to build a new life. This sick individual is the one at fault, not you. Never you. Sarah nodded, but the guilt remained heavy in her chest. That evening, Detective Morrison gathered everyone in the station's conference room. Sarah, Marcos, Officer Santos, and several other officers. We've made progress on the emails, he announced. Our tech team traced them through several proxy servers, but they eventually narrowed down the general location. The emails were sent from somewhere in Moonlight Bay, as we suspected. More specifically, they appear to have originated from several locations around town, but with a concentration of signals coming from the area near Seacliff Drive. Sarah's neighborhood. The stalker lived near her, or at least spent significant time there. We were going to conduct door-to-door inquiries, Detective Morrison continued. We'll ask about any suspicious behavior, anyone who seems to take an unusual interest in your street, Sarah. We were also going to review security footage from businesses near your house. What should I do? Sarah asked. For now, you stay here. We've arranged for the Safi house, but it won't be ready until tomorrow. Tonight, you'll sleep here at the station where we can keep you secure. Marcos spoke up. Can I stay? I don't want to leave her alone. Detective Morrison and Officer Santos exchanged glances. That is up to Sarah. Sarah looked at her ex-husband, this man she had once loved, then grown to resent, then finally left behind. But right now, he was a familiar face in a nightmare landscape. She nodded. He can stay. That night, Marcos slept on the couch in the break room while Sarah took the cot they sat up in an empty office. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was elusive. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined her stalker as a face, though she called into picture features just a formal shadow with watching eyes. Around midnight, unable to sleep, Sarah got up and went to the break room. Marcos was awake too, sitting in the dark and staring at his phone. Can't you sleep either? He asked. No. Sarah sat down across from him. Marcos, why did you really come? We were divorced. You owe me nothing. Marcos was quiet for a long moment, because even though our marriage ended, even though we said terrible things to each other, I still care about you. You were a huge part of my life, Sarah. Just because we called in to make it work doesn't mean I want you to suffer. Or worse. I am sorry, Sarah said suddenly, for how things ended. For some of the things I said. I am sorry too. We both made mistakes. They sat in companionable silence, two people connected by history and shared trauma, no longer lovers but not strangers either. The next morning brought developments. Detective Morrison called Sarah into his office, his expression troubled. We've been reviewing security footage from businesses near your house, he began. There is a gas station 2 blocks from Seacliff Drive with cameras covering the street. We went through footage from the past several weeks, focusing on the teams when incidents occurred. And we found something interesting. On several occasions, late at night, a car appears on camera, moving slowly down the street toward your house. Always between 2 and 3 in the morning. The footage isn't high quality, but we can see it as a dark sedan. Sarah's heart had spiked. The car that followed me. Possibly. But here is where it gets strange. We ran the partial license plate we could see through traffic databases. The car is registered to someone who lives in Moonlight Bay, someone you know. Sarah's mouth went dry. Who? Detective Morrison turned his computer monitor toward her. On the screen was a DMV photo of a man Sarah recognized instantly. Michael Chen, the young librarian she worked with every day. No, Sarah breathed. That can't be right. Michael is. He is quiet, shy. He barely talks to anyone. Tell me about your interactions with him, Detective Morrison said. Sarah tried to remember. Michael had worked at the library for about 2 years, according to Director Morrison. He was in his mid-20s, always polite but reserved. He handled the circulation desk, checking books in and out, helping patrons with computer questions. Sarah had never had a lengthy conversation with him, just brief exchanges about work tasks. But now that she thought about it, Michael did always seem to be around. When she was shelving books, he would often be nearby, returning items to the stacks. When she ate lunch in the break room, he would come in for coffee. Had he been watching her this whole time? We were bringing him in for questioning, Detective Morrison said. In the meantime, I don't want you going back to the library. We've already called Director Morrison to inform her of the situation. For the next several hours, Sarah waited anxiously at the station while Detective Morrison and his team questioned Michael Chen. Marcus stayed with her, both of them jumping at every sound, hoping for answers. Finally, Detective Morrison emerged from the interview room, shaking his head. It is not him, he said. What? Sarah felt confused relief mixed with disappointment. But the car is registered to him, yes. But Michael is an alibi for several of the incidents. He was working the night shift at a warehouse, his second job. We verified it with his employer and co-workers. He claimed to have been following your leaving notice while he was clocked in across town. Then he was driving his car. His younger brother, Jason. They shared a vehicle. Jason claims he was just driving around late at night because he has insomnia and it helps him relax. Says he didn't know he was driving near your house, that he just wanders aimlessly. That is suspicious as hell, Marcus said. Agreed. We've brought Jason in for questioning now. But Jason Chen proved to be an even bigger dead end. He was 19, still living at home with his parents, and worked at a surf shop in town. He seemed genuinely confused about why he was at the police station. When they showed him the security footage of his car, he admitted it was him driving but insisted he had no idea where Sarah lived, had never heard of her until that moment. He is either an incredible actor, or he is telling the truth, Officer Santos said after watching the interrogation through the one-way glass. Then we raid back to square one, Sarah said, feeling defeated. But Detective Morrison wasn't ready to give up. Not necessarily. If someone else had access to Jason's car, they could have used it to follow you. Who else might have keys? They questioned both Michael and Jason, but the answer was disappointing. The car keys stayed on a hook by the front door of the Chen family home. Anyone in the household could access them. That included Michael, Jason, their parents, and Jason's girlfriend who frequently stayed over. The investigation seemed to be crumbling. Every lead turned into a dead end. Every suspect had an alibi or a logical explanation. That evening, Sarah sat in the conference room with Marcus, both of them exhausted and frustrated. This doesn't make sense, Sarah said. Someone is stalking me. Someone who knows my schedule, my habits, where I live. Someone who can get into my house and take photos of me sleeping. How can we have no suspects? Marcus frowned, thinking, what if we were looking at this wrong? What if it is not one person, but someone working with help? Someone who has access to information and resources. Like who? I don't know. But think about it. The note is in your mailbox, that could be anyone walking by, but getting into your house, into the room, following you in the Chen car, that takes coordination. Multiple people, or what? Or someone with special skills. Someone who knows how to avoid cameras, pick locks, cover their tracks. Officer Santos, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. Someone with law enforcement or military training, you mean? The room went silent. Sarah felt ease in her veins. UA saying it could be a cop. EM saying we shouldn't rule anything out. Officer Santos replied carefully. But let us not jump to conclusions. It could also be a security professional, a locksmith, someone with technical skills. But this seed was planted. Sarah looked around the police station with new eyes. How many officers had access to her Casafila? Who knew where she was staying? What her schedule was? Every detail of the investigation. I need to leave, Sarah said suddenly, standing up. I need to get out of here. Sarah, wait, Detective Morrison said, entering the room. We way close. I can feel it. Don't they give up now? Close to what? Every letter's gone nowhere. Meanwhile, whoever is doing this knows I'm here. Knows I'm vulnerable. I need to leave Moonlight Bay, leave California. I should have listened to Denny from the start. If you run, this person might follow, Officer Santos pointed out. Or they might lose interest and move on to someone else. Sarah grabbed her jacket. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I can't live in fear every second. I'm leaving tonight.